13 years. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gracie Combatives 2.0, the #1 beginner jiu-jitsu instructional series of all time, completely redone, and we can't wait to share it with you.
Over the last century, jiu-jitsu has been proven to be the single most effective martial art in real combat for smaller, weaker individuals against larger, more athletic opponents.
Even though jiu-jitsu consists of thousands of techniques, studies of actual fights have shown that 36 techniques have been used more often and with greater success than all the other techniques combined. And these 36 techniques are the foundation of the Gracie Combatives program.
Originally developed for the US Army, Gracie Combatives was designed to prepare any man or woman to defend themselves in a physical altercation in the least amount of time possible.
In 2009, we first released Gracie Combatives on video so civilians could learn it from anywhere in the world. And today, it's the foundational beginner program at hundreds of certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training centers all over the world.
The way we look at it is the Gracie Family Jiu-Jitsu legacy is broken down into 3 phases.
Phase 1 was to develop and refine the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was accomplished by our grandfather, Hélio Gracie, and his brother, Carlos.
Phase 2 was to prove the efficacy of jiu-jitsu in combat, and that was accomplished by our father, our uncles, as well as so many jiu-jitsu representatives around the world.
And phase 3 is to teach jiu-jitsu to everyone who is eager to learn. And that's where we enter the equation by creating demographic-specific online jiu-jitsu programs for men, women, and children, and by creating a global network of certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training centers. We've dedicated our lives to making sure that jiu-jitsu is accessible to everyone who wants to learn.
What makes Gracie Combatives so special is that literally anyone can do it.
And you don't need any previous experience to get started. And because of this, it's widely regarded as the best beginner jiu-jitsu program ever produced.
Can you even say that?
I'm not saying it, friends. I'm just repeating what so many BJJ black belts have shared with us over the last 13 years.
All right, that's fair. Best of all, when you complete this course, you'll have the opportunity to demonstrate your proficiency in the techniques and earn your Gracie Combatives belt.
All right, friends, welcome to the family. We have a few very important items we need to discuss before we get started with lesson #1. Besides the efficacy of the actual techniques, what makes Gracie Combatives so special is the structure and the curriculum design. Now, it was amazing 13 years ago, but it got better.
It got better.
You guys, we got better. We've learned so much about the strengths and the very minor weaknesses in the original design, so we've tweaked it to basically patch up those holes and create the perfect beginner jiu-jitsu curriculum. 36 lessons, just like the original form. And just like the original form, they're linear. Now, what does linear mean for our friends who are just joining us?
It means you learn lesson 1, and then lesson 2 builds off lesson 1. And this is so different from what you see at so many jiu-jitsu schools because you show up and you learn something that you wouldn't normally teach someone on their first day. But not here. It's linear, so we're going to take care of you all the way through.
Not only is this uncommon in BJJ schools, right? It's uncommon in BJJ instructional videos. Most BJJ instructionals just say, okay, here's a video on chokes.
A whole bunch of chokes.
Here's a video on arm bars. But if you're the student who purchases that, it's up to you to try and decipher where in your arsenal these techniques land. But because Gracie Combatives is entirely designed to be a lowest common denominator, no experience necessary to start curriculum, lesson 1 is truly lesson 1. It's like, hello, nice to meet you. Welcome to jiu-jitsu. Here's the first technique you need to learn. And I think a lot of other instructors don't commit to a curriculum of this level of structure because it takes a lot of courage to say, this is lesson 1, and this is lesson 2, and this is lesson 3. Right? You have to commit. You're stating your position. And Hiron and I have been unmistakably clear about the fact that jiu-jitsu is easier to learn in the logical sequence. So all we thought was if we had a private student, one-on-one or two-on-one, and you are our student here personally at Gracie University, what is the order through which we would teach you jiu-jitsu at the beginner level? And this is the product of that research and all those considerations. All the layering of these techniques is because there is a natural sequence to the techniques, and certain moves make way more sense if learned after other techniques. And if you change the order, you change the effectiveness of the program, no doubt.
So it makes it easier to learn.
100%. Everything builds and is compounding. So lesson 15 builds on 1 through 14. They're always stacking on each other, and your reflexes develop all the way through as a result of this careful structure.
Now, we also have solo preparation drills for every single lesson.
This is new.
This is new, and this is very important. It serves two purposes.
Yes.
One, it's an amazing warm-up before you practice with your partner.
100%.
And two, sometimes you don't have a partner. What can you do by yourself to help you practice the technique?
And this was one of the #1 questions we got when the original Gracie Combatives released 13 years ago was, I love it, seems super exciting, jiu-jitsu is the hype right now, I want to learn, but I don't have a partner. And I don't have a partner for 4 months. So the solo preparation drills we provide in every single lesson are with that in mind. It's like, look, if you don't have someone to practice with, you can still be productive. You can still do jiu-jitsu movements and get your body ready for all the angles and all the techniques you will eventually master. But one thing fair to say is this: you can get very far in your comprehension just from watching our lessons and doing all the solo preparation drills that we provide. However, when it finally comes to true reflex development for actual combat against another human, you have to practice against another human. So I don't know, let's just say that for any particular technique, you can get 50% of the way there.
50% understanding.
Comprehension and body mobility, like where your body moves. But the other 50%, you're gonna need a partner to practice. So enjoy it, use it. And even if you have a partner to practice with,
Yes.
when you're preparing for today's lesson, let's say you and I are partners, we both do the solo preparation drills individually,
100%.
even if we have a partner. So these are not exclusive to people who don't have a partner. They're incredibly useful. Even if you're in the same room as someone, you both do the solo prep drills to get your body ready for the day's lessons.
So each lesson has multiple technical slices. We don't just teach a lesson and that's the end of it.
Right.
There's multiple slices. And what is a slice?
A slice is like a pie.
A pie
Has slices.
Yes.
If you want to consume a pie, pizza or like an apple pie or whatever pie, you can try to eat the whole thing at once.
Or you probably shouldn't eat that much pie in the first place, right?
So that's where this all came up with. That's where the whole concept came up with, you guys.
But it's easier to digest.
If you're gonna eat something, slice it up, chop it up.
So if you're gonna learn a technique, you learn one variation.
Yes.
And then right after we say, you know what? Now here's another variation.
Yes.
The attacker might do this. And that way you say, okay, I got one for if they're holding me like this, and I got one for this. Instead of learning 2 or 3 variations at once, it's overwhelming.
And you know what this ultimately boils down to? It's the right time to introduce indicators as a concept in the Gracie Combatives program and in your jiu-jitsu. What you have to understand about jiu-jitsu is it's a very responsive art, right? We're self-defense and we're defending against the ambitions and the attacks of an assailant potentially in a street fight. Everything is based on the indicators they present to us. So if Hidon is trying to punch me, I'll do the punch block variation of the trap and roll. If he's trying to strangle me, the indicator is the behavior that triggers my deployment of any particular variation. So what you'll notice in any given lesson, when the indicator changes, so does the variation of the technique. And those different variations, those different responses, contingencies based on the attack indicator, those are different technique slices. And it's shocking to us how poorly the BJJ community as a whole handles teaching of techniques that address multiple indicators. Instructors who don't have a lot of teaching experience or were never certified to actually know how to communicate jiu-jitsu effectively, what they'll often do is they'll show a scenario, a mount escape situation, and they'll say, okay guys, let's get ready to learn. Everyone line up and watch this. If the guy punches me, do this. If they strangle you, do this. And if they headlock you, do this. And they just showed 3 separate techniques. And if you're a beginner, you're like this. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you barely know what the mount is.
Yeah.
Everything is new for you.
Are you asking me, teacher, to practice all of those right now? Every single thing you just explained I'm supposed to practice? So we take the thinking out of it. When we want you to practice something, we show you in one slice. Once we're done practicing that, we provide also a silent demo for each of these slices. So after we show a technical slice, we provide a video that has no audio that just demonstrates us demonstrating how to practice the technique.
Got it. So you can watch us practicing as you're practicing.
There you go.
And at any moment, if you kind of get lost on a step, you look up for reference and you say,
Yes.
oh, the hand is like this.
Rather than having to go back and rewatch the whole lesson, by watching the silent demo drill videos that we provide in the lesson interface, you can go right to that, and you're like, now after you watch a slice, you pause the video, you click play on the silent demo. The silent demo launches, and we're just playing up there on loop and just going through the technique over and over again, and that gives you the opportunity to have a quick reference. But the point is, we're gonna drill that with you. So you're practicing, you're going through the motions. Typically, I would say what? We recommend like 5 to 7 minutes in terms of practicing the techniques, actually going through it. 5 to 7 minutes, do what we instruct, go through it. You're both practicing back and forth. We'll give you specific drill orders. And then after that, when you feel semi-comfortable with that variation, not like masterful, but like it makes sense for my body. I understand what we're doing here. These steps are logical and effective for me now. Then you say, okay, play the next slice. And you go into the next part of the lesson. You watch it with us, you learn with us, and then you press pause at the end and you launch the silent demo there again. So there's this natural, very controlled progression. We teach you, you practice. We teach you, you practice. And every time you practice, you're watching us. But this is the point. The slicing up of techniques into bite-sized pieces that make sense for beginners is what we are the best in the world at. And I'm not saying that to boast. I'm saying that to give you confidence that we've done all the thinking for you in terms of you're gonna be successful with us. Because even the most complex tasks, we are masters at slicing them and making them digestible in the smallest bite-sized pieces for everyone.
Yeah, we want you to master these techniques. By the end of this course, we want you to own all of this material, and the slices help make that possible.
And that's the same way we would do it in personal training with you one-on-one. So we've just shared it, and now it's being done via video learning, and you're doing this from home or with your friends in a training environment.
Now, after a lesson gives you sometimes 2, 3, 4 slices, there's gonna be a bonus slice
Ding, ding,
per
ding,
lesson.
ding. Exciting new addition to Gracie Combatives 2.0, bonus slices. So we've been teaching this now for 13 years. We have hundreds of schools that teach this curriculum as their beginner program. You should visit one. If you live near one, 100% go to the certified training center near you, because then you're gonna have a coach there to oversee your progress and help you and help navigate. Even if you're learning from home, checking in with one of these certified training centers periodically and having private classes, they can calibrate to make sure you're on the right path. Back to the point, bonus slices. So the question we asked to decide what we can add as a bonus slice in any given lesson was, it's almost like if you're using this technique or this kind of lesson against someone who's slightly more knowledgeable.
Just slightly,
Yeah,
though.
we're not talking about like sport jiu-jitsu or someone else who trains for years of experience. We're talking about someone else.
Maybe they just read what you tried on the first slice.
Interesting.
And now they're responding to, because you showed them your cards.
I love that.
Now they're a little smarter.
So they identified in you what your intentions were, and as a result, they're now adjusting their behavior. So they're a little more intelligent based on their maybe 10-second ago interaction with you or your attempted technique that didn't work. So now they're privy to what you're trying to do. The point is,
we experience that all the time.
All the time.
We've experienced so many times where we try a technique, the person sees it done
Yes,
successfully,
yes.
and then they mount us again. And now they behave a little differently.
For sure.
So then we gave you the bonus details, the bonus slices that we use
all the time,
right after when the Gracie Combatives techniques are not quite available.
There you go. The original Gracie Combatives techniques and slices, when they don't quite work as intended, it's like, what's the one additional thing we want to show about this lesson beyond the original core curriculum? That's what we wanted to run with.
The chances of you needing a bonus slice when you're fighting someone on the side of the gas station corner is like 1% chance.
1%
You're not going
or
to need
less.
it. Now, if you fight that same guy on the street corner 3 weekends in a row, then you might need a bonus slice.
I love that. That's the analogy. Perfect analogy. All right. Back to the technical slices briefly before we move on to the rest of the program outline. Every technical slice has bonus details.
Yeah, because, I mean, we taught
13 years.
bonus details compared to what we filmed 13 years ago.
I know, and that's because some people are wondering, I already have Gracie Combatives.
Oh, you do?
I've already seen 1.0. I love it, and do I need this? Yes.
And how do we think of these details? We already knew many of them, maybe they weren't explained, but many of them we kind of discovered in the teaching of it.
Of
In
course.
watching students do the techniques. We watch students here all day, every day, do the techniques, and we're like, wow, if they just did this, it would make it even easier.
And we've noticed, like, over the tens of thousands, we have now hundreds of thousands of people learning online, tens of thousands of people training at certified training centers. Thousands of people have tested in this material over the last 13 years via video evaluation and in-person evaluation, and we now know how we communicated Gracie Combatives the first time and what the holes were in our communication. We've patched all those holes. That's the way to say it, right? It's like we know what the most common mistakes are for students all over the world, and we're like, wow, everyone seems to have trouble on this technique. So let's explain it better, and this is our chance. 2.0 is our chance to recycle through every lesson with an entirely new perspective based on experience. That's the only reason we did this. There's so much we wanted to share. If the techniques, all of them were the same, we wouldn't do a 2.0. We only did it because every single lesson needed that 13-year update, and it's going down right now.
It's the fine tuning.
Excellent. So after the bonus slices, right, that little, he don't said it, the third time at the gas station, you fight the same guy 3 times, you're gonna need those bonus slices. Just a side note on the bonus slices, you won't be tested on them. The Gracie Combatives test, which we're gonna discuss more in a minute here, the Gracie Combative test in its original form and with these modified variations of the new technical slices and their revisions, it's gonna be pretty much the same structure. Bonus slices are not gonna be tested for. We just wanted to let you know. So they're there for you to learn. They're incredible to learn. They're gonna greatly improve your jiu-jitsu, but on the testing side of it, it's a bonus slice for a reason, and it's just there for you and your arsenal. You're gonna need it in your jiu-jitsu, but you're not gonna be tested at Gracie Combatives testing evaluation period. All right, reflex development drills.
Yeah, you mentioned when you're learning a slice to practice for 5 to 7 minutes.
Boom, 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 get comfortable, build a relationship.
The reason why you're able to practice for only 5 to 7 minutes is because we have reflex development drills at the end of the class.
Every class.
What does that mean? That means you just learn 3 slices.
Yes, sir.
For example.
3 different indicators. If he does this, you do this.
Yes.
He does that. He does this, you do that. Correct.
So now you have a reflex development drill to practice all of those slices.
Yeah. And the mastery that takes place in the RD or the reflex development drill, the mastery that takes place is the mastery of indicator recognition.
So it's your partner.
Yes, your partner.
Knowing how to give you the indicators to help you review all the techniques, all the different slices of that lesson.
So this is critical because in the individual slices, we tell you what indicator you're gonna counter with your technique. In the reflex development drill, we don't tell you specifically or the order. Your attacker can diversify their indicator presentations, and then your responses are based on your muscle memory or the gradually developing muscle memory. And we provide very specific guidelines on how to make those reflex development drills very productive once we get started. But the point is, when you're in there, it's all about being the good bad guy for your partner who presents the indicators very deliberately at an intensity and at a pace that your partner can handle comfortably. And as their confidence increases, so can my intensity and so can my pace, right? So that's what you need to understand is that, right, there's a graduality to it and start off very slow just for Hidon to know which variation to choose based on different behaviors. That's a big task because up until now, he's known exactly which variation and no one had to tell him what to do. So be patient with each other, indicator recognition, reflex development drills, and as your partner gets better, you can intensify those gradually and even consider doing things on both sides, potentially.
Now, after you do reflex development drills for a while, you're gonna want a little more because you're gonna start feeling good.
Yeah.
Because as your reflex development, they attack here, here, and here. And you have,
Before you know it, you're patching all of them.
You read the indicators for all 3, you're good, you understand that. But now you want a little more challenge.
Fight simulation drills. You guys, we love these. So if indicator mastery happens in the reflex development drill, if the reflex development drill is really about pulling together the indicators in a single lesson, fight simulation drills are all about pulling together different techniques from different lessons, right? So instead of focusing on this lesson and the indicators within, now it's time for the FSD, where we take techniques from lesson 15 that you just learned today, lesson 12, lesson 7, and lesson 2, and we string all of those together in a continuous, natural fight simulation drill. And it's precisely what it sounds like. Fight simulation drill. A real fight, not going to be one hold and it's done. It's going to be a stringing together. You close the distance, you take the person down, you achieve a dominant position, you get a position of control or an advantage or a submission, and then you negotiate with the subject from there to gain compliance. It's a string of techniques, and those strings, scripted by us for you, are the fight simulation
your
drills.
ability to transition from one technique to the other.
Yes.
Because like you said, a fight is not one move. A fight could be 3, 4, 5, 6 moves. So we create 30.
Oh yeah, 36. We're really
A little bit
35.
less.
Lesson 2 is the first FSD. Lesson 1 doesn't have one because you only have one lesson.
Maybe, 33,
35
34.
fight simulation
There's
drills.
a lot of fight simulation drills. So we saw the fight going 34, 35
I think you're
different
right. I think
ways.
first 2 classes don't have FSDs. Maybe
The point is that there's so many fights.
yes,
And
every single class has a sequence.
Sometimes the sequence happens where you go on top. Sometimes it happens where you get overwhelmed and you fall on the bottom. Either way, it's a sequence to help you transition from technique to technique.
And we explain this in the FSDs, fight simulation drills. Our recommendation is this. We provide very specific script. We say trap and roll, punch block variation, Americana arm lock, neck hug variation. Very specific script, and what we want you to do is follow the script perfectly 2 times each when you do the FSD. I'll do the whole FSD once, he'll do it once, I'll do it twice, he'll do it twice. Once we learn the script perfectly, if you want to continue training and kind of work more and get more reps in, you can do it again, and then you're allowed to change the variation at each particular piece of that fight simulation drill. So instead of giving me the punch block variation of the trap and roll, Hito might grab me in a headlock. So now we can make an FSD that has reflex development, indicator recognition components built into it. And that's a super FSD, and we're excited for you guys to learn that. So fight simulation drills are scripted all the way through. When it comes time for testing, and we'll discuss this more thoroughly in a minute, we're gonna have unscripted fight simulation drill.
Freestyle.
Freestyle, just freaking go. And that's going to be a requirement for your final Gracie Combatives test.
Which will be no problem.
No problem.
With
because
all your practice.
With all the scripted practice, you're going to be just fine. Because you're going to learn so many flows that eventually you're going to realize, oh my gosh, I don't need someone to tell me where to flow. I can just go. And once you hit that point, that's when you know you're ready for the freestyle fight simulation drill that'll be requested of you in your test.
After you do your FSDs, it's nice to have a little talk at the end of class. We're gonna share some of the key, what is our mindset? Like, what are the key mindsets when thinking about that lesson?
Right.
So we have a mindset minute at the end of each class.
Just summarize it. Like, if you forget everything, remember this about this class, right? And we enjoy those very much, called the Mindset Minute. It should be Mindset Minutes, plural, because sometimes we go over a minute, we get excited, the energy is flying, the Hidonji is flying. And then a new addition to the family, street tips.
Now, this is all self-defense.
Everything is self-defense.
Gracie Combatives is all about defending yourself.
Right.
But we're practicing in a garage,
Mat.
on a mat, in,
Comfortable rash guards
comfortable
and spats.
clothing.
Yeah.
We're not wearing restricted clothing, for example. So let's talk about street tips.
This was a new idea, and it was by popular demand. People were like, hey, what if you're fighting on concrete? Or hey, what if there's multiple attackers? Or hey, what if they go for your groin or your eyes during the fight? And all the time we would be like, yeah, we have little talks here and there. But we're like, yo, if we're gonna do this right this time, let's settle this once and for all. So many lessons have street tips. And street tips are precisely that. Unique considerations that you'll need for a violent physical altercation out in the open environment, in the wild, basically, that you would not ever think about in a comfortable training environment. We never think about when we're here in the group class or BJJ schools around the world. They're just not even talked about. So what are the categories of street tip considerations?
Yeah, like the terrain, for example.
Terrain.
You could just a curb.
A curb.
A random curb.
A random elevation.
Has to be considered. And when you hit the curb, how to respond.
And if you fall on concrete, if you fall on grass, if you fall on sand, every terrain has assets and liabilities, right? What's the asset for concrete? Traction. What's the liability? Concrete, impact, negativity. What's the asset for grass? Softness. What's the liability? No traction, especially if it's a little bit wet. What's the asset for sand? Super soft. What's the liability? If that sand spills into your eye, your visibility could be greatly impaired. The point is, terrain considerations, legal considerations, appropriate levels of force during a self-defense situation. safety considerations for your body if you get injured during the fight.
Dirty fighting tactics.
We asked
number
eye
one question
gouging,
ever. Groin shots, biting. What if somebody biting you?
So we provide guidelines in all of these categories, considerations, and these are all layered on top of your foundation of technical proficiency in the Gracie Combatives techniques, right? We talk about confined space. We talk about multiple attackers. People always want to know, what about multiple attackers? And the answer is there isn't one perfect technique for multiple attackers, but there is a mindset. And if you have the mindset, you're exponentially more likely to survive a violent attack with multiple threats than you are if you've never thought about these situations.
So even just having the conversations when we
gosh.
show these street tips, just talking about it already does so much.
Huge.
You don't necessarily have to go practice in the sand with sand in your eyes.
You don't have to at all.
But talking about it will prepare you for if the day ever happens and there is some, dirt or sand going into your eyes, you have some idea as to how to address that.
You're gonna love these street tips. We had a lot of fun producing them. We got out there in the wild and we got dirty, you guys. We even got a little bruised up, but it was worth it for the purpose of helping you guys understand what those considerations are. And these are worth rewatching on a regular basis so they're always fresh in your mind. Finally, you guys, probably the biggest change to Gracie Combatives. Bonus slices was major. Street tips, major. The 32 principles of jiu-jitsu. Combined, our lives, we have over 70 years of practice of jiu-jitsu between Hiron and I at this point right now. And over that time, we've realized, and it took us a long time to realize this, that all of jiu-jitsu is made possible by 32 core principles. You always hear about leverage, timing, control.
Well, 32 core principles, 32
micro principles. Because what we call the macro principles are well known, and everybody likes to tout them.
We can call those the core principles.
Yeah, okay, fine. Macro and micro is better. They're all core. Macro is leverage, timing, efficiency, energy efficiency. Those are macro. And some people hear those and go, yeah, that makes sense, but it's so abstract that, right, actually utilizing leverage and timing and becoming more energy efficient, that is difficult to accomplish if you don't understand the micro principles that are really the specific uses of leverage, combination with timing, combined with certain elements of control. So these micro principles that we've extrapolated from so many decades of practice of jiu-jitsu, we've now made public to the world. They exist. The 32 principles of jiu-jitsu, complete online curriculum. It's a core part of the study from purple to brown belt in jiu-jitsu. It's one thing that we require people to master from purple to brown belt through the online curriculum. But here's what we did. We went ahead and we dove in and we added in every single slice of the Gracie Combatives program, we added 2 core, maybe 3 sometimes when we got excited, core principles of these micro principles. We identified the 2 that we wanted to focus on, priority principles we'll call them, for each slice. What's the benefit of this for a beginner to hear these?
It's not for you to be tested on.
You're not going to be tested,
No.
and you won't master them.
It's just for you to get your toes wet.
Nice to meet you.
It's just for you to say hello to the principle, because we know that if you decide to continue your journey on this path of jiu-jitsu, you're going to make a better relate. Down the road, you're going to connect more with these 32 principles. So you're just getting your feet wet.
Just nice to meet you, build that relationship. Now, here's what you will notice is that these 32 principles, I think that we counted like something like 250 plus references of principles in all these slices for all the Gracie Combatives lessons. So these 32 repeat themselves many times. And that's where everything starts to come together. Because when you see that the pyramid principle is used in lesson 1, lesson 7, and lesson 17, and you see the different methods and purposes for which the pyramid principle is being applied, you're gonna start saying, oh my gosh, even though these techniques are completely different, the principle that makes them possible is the same. And then you're gonna realize that your loyalty isn't to individual steps of techniques. Your loyalty and your rooted confidence of jiu-jitsu is in the 32 principles. And then if you ever end up in a situation, a fight or a situation of jiu-jitsu or martial arts or survival, if you ever end up in a situation for which you've never learned a precise technique, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, you don't have an answer. The principles and that relationship that you've built and invested in with them will set you free, because you can improvise in a situation if the core ingredients, those 32 principles, exist within your jiu-jitsu and in your consciousness of jiu-jitsu.
I feel like you're saying that you can build a relationship with these principles even at the beginner level.
Yes.
To where if one day, 3 months, 6 months down the road, you're in a situation where you don't have an answer, you can call on those principles.
And listen, most BJJ teachers around the world embody these principles in one form or another, right? They don't have names for them, they haven't labeled them. And because these BJJ masters don't identify these principles for their beginner students, the beginners often won't make a relationship with those principles for years, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, until they get their own brown and black belts. What we're saying is absolutely, by us calling them out, we're allowing you to start building a relationship with each principle way sooner than if we were quiet about it and all we taught you was trap the wrist, trap the elbow, trap the foot, bridge and roll. That's called a trap and roll escape. You miss so many principles when you don't look through the technique at the core concepts that make it possible. And we're gonna do that introspective analysis in every single slice for you guys. And the hardest part about it was restricting ourselves from giving too many principles because there are so many. So we stuck to 2 per slice.
And listen, we have been starting to implement principle talk in our lessons here at Gracie University headquarters, as well as our certified training centers around the world. So if that's the case here in person, it's gonna happen for you guys on this course.
Gracie Combatives 2.0, you guys. It was very good 13 years ago. It's a whole different beast now that we've added all these new elements. We can't wait to share it with you. Even though we've gone to great lengths to make this program incredibly useful, right? Beneficial from a learning experience, productive for anyone, even those without training partners. Even though that's true, we've never gone to such lengths to make a program so useful, so low.
Yes.
Even though that's true, ultimately, to close the loop, develop full reflexes, earn your Gracie Combatives belt, complete the program, move on in your jiu-jitsu journey, you will need to practice with a partner.
So you might start solo.
You might start 3,
and
4,
then
5
you
months.
might find someone down the road to join your team.
And by the way, you could, if you start solo, you spend 3, 6 months just watching and doing the solo prep drills and learning the moves and going through them by yourself. You can get quite good.
Yeah.
You can really understand conceptually all the moves.
Yes.
And then one day when you get a partner, it's like, yo, let me show you what I've learned. And like you can almost mentor them just based on your knowledge. However,
talking about partners.
when it comes to finding the partner, Hidon, give us some guidelines. Let's talk about the perfect partner. And then listen, we got to accept that at some point we might not have the perfect partner, so we'll take what we can get.
Yeah.
But, right? Beggars can't be choosers, so we'll take what we can get. But generally, if we have an ideal that what we're looking for and what we're trying to be for one another, this video is as much for your partner as it is to help you find a partner. So everyone's watching this right now, even if you are the partner, pay attention. We're going to tell you what you need to act like.
Yeah, I guess the big thing is communication. That we're working to become the perfect partner.
There you go.
Right? That we're open to hearing feedback and saying, hey, listen, slow down a little bit. Or, you know, you help me out here. Go a little bit, you know, go a little slower, go a little faster. We're working together.
I think
it's
that
the work together attitude.
Listen, the expectation, the understanding, right? That we are 2 separate people. We're going to progress at different paces. We're going to need different intensity. We're going to want to go through the lessons at a different timing on a different time of day. Who knows? The point is, above everything else, we need to be patient with one another, right? If he's trying to learn faster, I got to be patient with him. But when I'm doing the move and he's trying to move on me and I want to go slower, he has to be patient with me at my rate of progress and how I'm trying to go through this program. So patience and compassion for the fact that we are different people and we'll go through this at a different pace is at the foundation of a successful partnership between 2 people trying to learn this program.
As well as a certain respect and a positive outlook.
Yeah.
And energy. When you're doing the move and you're having a hard time, be on your side. I'm supporting you.
Right.
Hey, you're struggling with the move a little bit. It's all good. You're going to get this.
You're going to get this. And look, if the technique is 100%, there's 100% of a technique. But let's say your partner only does it 60% proficiently. They're missing 40%. You have a choice. You can focus on the 60 they're doing or the 40% they're missing.
Yeah.
When we teach children, we call this push teaching versus pull teaching. Right? If you are talking about the 40 that they're missing, you're pulling them from the direction that they don't yet exist. If you talk about the 60 that they're doing right and you're emphasizing you're positive and you're saying, man,
you build
great
them.
hip. Maybe the hands were completely wrong, but your hip pressure was amazing. So I can say, hey, Hidon, great hip pressure. I'm not even talking about the hands. that push teaching is so much more encouraging. It's really positive reinforcement. And sometimes when you know someone and you're kind of, whether it's a brother or sister, a family member, a significant other, it can be hard. Sometimes you want to be a little more assertive and aggressive and demanding, and expectations are higher than they should be, and it ruins the relationship. So positivity and patience ultimately are two kind of foundational. If you have those two, it's always going to be successful. You're always going to have fun.
And there's two reasons to be positive and patient. Is because when you do that, when you build them like that and you focus on the 60% that's right, they feel better about that training experience, that day, that hour of practice. So then they want to come back. So selfishly for you want them to come back because you want a training partner, and you also want them to learn these life-saving skills. So it's a win-win when it's a good experience because they learn the skills and you have a partner.
You got it. And now we talk about speed, right? Slow and safe. That's when we talk about perfect partner, when we kind of just the general idealistic perfect partner, someone who moves slow and someone who moves safely, who's considerate with their body weight, they're not clumsy and careless in terms of how they move with you in a way that could be injurious during practice. And they start off very slowly, and they understand that speed comes as a result of practice. They're not saying this mindset of, hey, we're learning how to fight, so we have to fight to learn. Wrong attitude, soldier. Chill out, get in the back. We don't want to even roll with you because you're kind of tripping. So no, you don't have to fight each other just because you're learning how to fight. You want to understand that the techniques at a slow, gradual pace. It's all about retention, connection, comprehension at this stage, way more so than it is about intensity. Yeah. Speed comes as a result of practice.
And speaking about speed, let's talk on speed. There's also a speed of wanting the person to learn faster.
Interesting.
And that's how you're going to mess things up. When you have a training partner that's a close friend, a family member, a significant other, and maybe they're not learning, they're not practicing, they're not doing the moves, they're not training 6 days a week. They're only training twice a week. And you and they feel it in you. You're giving off an energy of like, yeah, you're not drilling it enough. You got to go a little harder, a little faster. I need more dedication from you. When you give that person that energy, how do they feel?
They feel like they're not good enough for you, that they're not meeting your expectation, that they're letting you down. So now the thought of jiu-jitsu, Gracie Combatives practice, has a negative taste, a negative association in their mind. So every time you mention it, they go, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. This is very common with children. When you want the kid to do something more than they even want to do it, all of a sudden, and you're coaching the kid at class, hey, do this, Jimmy, line up, do that. You're not listening. Now all of a sudden, what was supposed to be fun is like the worst part of their week because they're being condemned every second of that experience is a negative association because they're disappointing you. So when we are significant others, now the crazy part is the bigger the gap in personal or intimacy or relationship between you and your training partner, the more resilient your partner will be to like, hey, man, we got to train more often.
I can't come.
I got to go to work. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, man, that's a bummer. Okay, no big deal. He doesn't take it that personal because we aren't that personal. But the more personal our relationship is, when I say, son, you're not doing it often enough, you now have an association of I'm a bad son, or I'm a bad wife, or I'm a bad husband.
Shame.
There's a little bit of shame. So now they associate jiu-jitsu with shame and they don't want to do it anymore. So what we're telling you right now is care enough about this journey together not to care too much. Because caring too much is how you're going to ruin it for your significant other. If all they want is twice a week for 2 slices, they don't even want to do the full 30 to 50 minute, 60 minute class. They just want to do 2 slices and they go, I'm good, honey. If you go, but no, done. Turn off the computer. We can cut now because this video should, done.
So listen, we know that the reason why you're saying train more, do more is because you want them to be better faster.
Because you want them to be safer sooner.
You want them to be street ready. But listen, none of that matters if they don't come back.
So you're thinking big picture when you care too much. But there's a bigger picture.
Yeah, your picture's not big enough.
You think it is until you get up in the helicopter and you go, oh my gosh, all these little people down there, they all have brains. And inside all their little brains, there's all kinds of problems. And I'm up here in the helicopter and I'm looking and I realize that, man, there's much bigger problems than what's going on in our head. So there's always a bigger perspective to look at things from. And Hidon's telling you to get in the helicopter and realize what's at stake here is massive. If you think I got to get them ready right away, street ready, you're tripping.
That's on their journey if they're a loved one.
Yes.
And now on the other side of it is you want a person. You need a body to practice with. So if all you have is your partner in life, and then they stop,
You're done.
and you live in the middle of nowhere.
Listen, but let's speak about middle of nowhere, okay? So talk about finding partners. It could be a friend, family, son, daughter, husband, wife, father, mother,
You can't
aunt,
find
uncle.
somebody.
Yes, if you can't convince anyone, and how do you convince someone to do it? Show them lesson number 1. Show them the intro, the very beginning, the main introduction for this course. Hear our energy. Let them hear our initial pitch. Let them watch this whole intro, whatever. Show them a lesson. Sit with them and say, hey, can I show you something? Watch these brothers. Watch them teach this lesson number 1, trap and roll. And they're going to vibe with the energy because you can't not get down with the energy, especially when we get riding and we go. It's vibeable. So they're going to see a lesson. They're going to say, wow, let me try that. And they're going to lay down. So don't say, do you want to learn BJJ? Say, can I show you something real quick? Like the street magic people. The street magic people walk up to people and say, hey, can I show you something? Can I show you a magic trick? Boom, all right. And then they show and they say, oh my gosh, people want to be shown something. Can I show you something? Not, do you want to learn something? It's too committal. Don't make them commit. Just ask them if they want to see something. This is some deep secrecy of sales here and marketing. And this is I'm sharing with the deepest of secrets here.
This is magic.
So you guys, in terms of finding a partner, if you can't find one within your sphere of influence, what I'll tell you is this. We have a database online at gracieuniversity.com, the official student database on GU. Hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. Many train at certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training centers, so they're already active students. Many are individual students whom, like you, train with a family member or who are looking to find a training partner, and they've indicated that in the search database. So we have a quick search feature where you can search within a certain mile radius, 5 or 10 miles, 20 miles from within your house, and find all people who are looking for training partners within any number of miles of your current location. This database is incredibly powerful. Some of the best of jiu-jitsu partnerships have happened and have been born on Gracie University as a result of this database. Now, we haven't vetted these people. These are all random people, but what you can do is communicate with them through the Gracie University interface. So you can send a message, maybe set up a time for a call, speak to them on the phone, find out their vibe, find out their energy. And if it's vibing with you, maybe set up to meet at a restaurant or a coffee shop and talk a little more in person. It's a gradual coming together. Now, if their vibe is trippy and they're creepy, then don't invite them to your house.
And let us know if their vibe is trippy.
And we'll go handle them. The point is, ultimately, if the vibe is right and the synergy is there, you guys get to be partners you met through GU, and now you're going through the curriculum because your husband or wife or son or daughter doesn't care and doesn't want to learn because you ruined that relationship because you pulled too soon, too quickly, and you ruined it for everyone. So we have individual students on Gracie University. We have what's called Gracie Garages. These are unofficial at-home training centers that have a minimal square footage of mat space, have access to the online curriculum, Gracie Combatives, and they've basically opened up their home to say, hey, I want people to be able to come train here. Obviously, you get to personally invite everyone. We don't share your address information, right? It's a very distant initial contact, but Gracie Garages are unofficial at-home training centers. There is no certified training, and there's no certified instructor in the environment. You're just saying that I have the curriculum, I have mats, and I invite other people to apply to come train with us in our garage setting. What's wild is that Gracie Garages have anytime started with 2 people, and then 3, and then 5, and then 12, and then 35 people in a Gracie Garage. And then the instructor, who eventually completes Gracie Combatives, goes through the instructor certification program, gets certified, and then because of this massive team that they've developed in the garage, they open Certified Training Center, which is an official for-profit jiu-jitsu business that is authorized to teach all of our programs, including Gracie Combatives, amongst others. The point is, the birth of certified training centers happens from you just saying, I want to learn, I want to get together with someone, and we want to go. And of course, certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training centers exist all over the world, and if you have one within reasonable driving distance, you should go visit it on a weekly basis if you can, even if you also train at home. But importantly, if it's too far to go weekly, then you go once a month. You drive 4 hours, you do a private class with the certified instructor, and they help make sure that you and your training partners are on track with the curriculum. Nothing more valuable than that recalibration at certain times and certain milestones.
It's so cool, right? How you learn, and then you love it so much, you can't help but want to share it with someone.
Right.
And that's how Gracie Garages and certified training centers take off.
Absolutely.
So they found the training partner. Once you find a training partner, we want you to follow our recommended training schedule.
Right. So in terms of actually going through the 36 lessons, some people say, 1 through 36, test for my Gracie Combatives belt. Not so fast. right? You'll go through it, you'll love it, but you won't have the muscle memory that you're gonna need to have. So we've created the Gracie Combatives recommended cyclic training schedule that teaches you how to cycle through these lessons, 3 lessons at a time. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. And then next week, you do lesson 4, lesson 5, lesson 6, but then you recycle lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, and lesson 7, lesson 8, lesson 9, and then lesson 4, lesson 5, lesson 6, and then 10, 11, 12, and then 7. So there's a cyclic structure that we've designed.
Huge emphasis on review.
Go through it again. And every single time you go through the same lesson, a second time you watch it and you practice it with full commitment, you will see details that you've never saw the first or second or third time. These things will jump out at you and you're gonna love them like they were new details because your cup won't be so full on subsequent reviews or practice sessions of the same lessons.
And I'm sure we know that you guys know that forgetting is a part of learning. It's only natural that you learn something and you forget it. So review is a necessary part of mastery.
That's where the muscle
and owning
memory,
these techniques.
That's where it's born. Through this cycle, going through Gracie Combatives one time is a 108-day process. So 36 lessons times 3 is 108. So the triple cyclic kind of completion method allows you to train for 108 days. Now that can be 108 days straight. That could be 3 days apart, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever your schedule is, 108 training days. You could do 2 sessions a day if you don't have a job or you have the best job that allows you to control your schedule.
But you need a training partner and no one can train twice a day.
No, your business partner also has all the free time in the world. Okay. So here's the point. We want you to do the 108-day training cycle twice. 216 days. So each lesson will have done 6 times each lesson. This is us just keeping it real with you. How long does it take? It takes 216 days. If you follow exactly what we're telling you and you do the 216 days, it's about 8 months, 8 to 12 months of dedicated practice. Of course, training 3-4 times a week. It's about 8 to 12 months, which mirrors the training time. If you were a student here in Torrance training all week long, it mirrors the minimum training time that a student, live, actual Gracie certified training center student needs to train before testing for their Gracie Combatives belt. So it lines up beautifully and we can't wait to see it. And if you have the skills at the end of those 216 days, 108 times 2, those 2 massive cycles through the entire process, if you have the skills by then, obviously, we're going to talk about testing later, but you'll be ready.
But go through that cycle twice, not even thinking about your test. Go through it because you want to own the material. If you want the test, if you want the belt, who knows? You might skip a few days. You might rush it. You might fake it on the test. You might not have the reflexes. Don't do that. Take this seriously because this is serious stuff.
Here are some indicators of things you can do to challenge yourself as you're progressing through these cycles of the 108 times 2.
Some indicators, some ideas.
Some ideas and indicators, right? It's like they're both. So the idea is this. When you go through a lesson the 3rd or 4th time, do everything on the other side. Everything switches sides. Just completely learn, practice, drill everything on the other side.
Which, believe it or not, you'll probably do better on the other side after doing the first side 4 times.
Yes.
Than if you did the other side on the 2nd time.
There you go.
So when you own one side, when you feel comfortable on one side, the other side almost comes more naturally.
Way more naturally because your body kind of has a strong relationship and you're just transferring it. It's pretty easy to do. So trying things on both sides is a great way to challenge. And if you go to the other side and all the techniques land very comfortably on both sides for every technique, you're getting close to the point where it's like, yo, every move is second nature on both sides. Hey, test might be right around the corner for you. So just something to keep in mind there. Also, blindfold. Try the techniques with obstructed vision. If you can't see, but you can go through all the moves by feel, or you do an entire FSD, fight simulation drill, with no sight, you just put a blindfold on, but your partner is obviously sighted and they're watching out for sharp edges and other people and making sure you're training safely, but they're guiding you and you can do the whole FSD blindfold. Another great indicator of like, wow, how's my relationship?
Yeah.
So what you're trying to do is think of new ways to experience the techniques, the same techniques experienced through new filters. Blindfolded is one filter. Left side is another filter. I mean, I'm sure you guys can think of even more filters than we've even provided. So
yeah, we're just trying to smooth out your techniques, and they will be so much smoother when you do drills like this.
There you go. So now let's talk about some of the actual training equipment that you're going to need to make this as productive and safe as possible. Mats. You're going to need something soft to train on. You can get away with carpet. like a pretty thick carpet and has like a carpet padding underneath it, as long as you can be on your knees for a reasonable amount of time on that carpet, you can do it on there, right? Especially for just calm, deliberate drilling, nothing too intense. You can do it there naturally.
Clothing,
but eventually even carpet gets annoying.
so having mats is nice.
Yeah, eventually picking up some mats.
10 by 10?
10 by 10 is like for sure sufficient space. Even a little less will work, but 10 by 10 is like the Gracie garage minimum for an official Gracie garage. It has to be, 100 square feet, which is 10 feet by 10 feet on your mats. Okay?
And if you are on carpet, it's nice to have your shoulders and your elbows covered, have long sleeves.
Yeah, for sure, to avoid that rug burn. So for sure, no matter what you're training on, even mats, you want to have knee coverage and shoulder coverage. Elbow would be the next one, not required, especially with mats. We felt fine in here, but knees and shoulders, because when you're on your back and you're shrimping and moving, your shoulders will rub a lot, and you're always on your knees when you're in mount. Your elbows won't bear a lot of weight, lots of time for all the lessons, but knees and shoulders, almost certainly in every lesson, they will. If you're the good guy or the bad guy, and we're in a grapple, you're putting all your weight on one of those two parts of your body. So so we love, these are called spats. These are called spats. These are fight shorts. These are called rash guards. They work great, right? They don't really kind of hold the moisture from when you sweat, and they're easy to clean. They dry very fast, and they give great coverage, and they're lean, and they don't really, not a lot of stuff to get fingers caught into. So they work great. But they're not mandatory. Anything you get shoulder and knee coverage, you're good to go. Just comfortable workout attire.
Here at Gracie University, as well as at our certified training centers around the world, we wear jiu-jitsu gis in like maybe 70% of the classes.
Yeah, beginner classes, 100%.
Combatives is all gi.
Yeah, Gracie Combatives, beginner classes, we come in, we wear this uniform, right? It's called a gi.
It looks nice.
It looks nice, yeah.
Dries up sweat.
Yeah, because if you're training with someone you just met, right? Maybe you don't feel comfortable with this type of attire with a brand new training partner. So wearing the gi, it's besides being nicely uniform in a group training environment, it's absolutely beneficial from a hygiene perspective because it's thicker, it's cotton, and it basically keeps the sweat from transmitting from one person to the next quite well.
But not one time throughout this course will any technique rely
On a gi,
on you holding the person's clothing,
which is one of the
because the gi represents clothing.
correct.
It's because someone might one day grab you by your clothing, and we'll discuss that, right? Someone's pinning you down, for example. That's different, but we don't rely on using someone's clothing to escape a position or defend ourselves from their punches or to submit.
Even though we wear uniforms, gi uniforms, in a group learning environment at certified training centers all over the world, and here at Gracie University, the fact that we're wearing the gi doesn't mean the program or its techniques are contingent on the gi to be effectively applied in a fight. None of the techniques are gi reliant. All of them are no gi applicable. If they have a gi, they could be enhanced potentially because you get an easier grip, but never do we say, okay, for this technique, grab the gi and pull here, which is something that is very common in just kind of traditional sportive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practice, where the gi is a major tool of control because it exists in the sport, which we'll talk more about in a second. The point is, you see a lot of gis in certified training centers, but they're not required for any of the techniques in Gracie Combatives, and you can rest assured of that. All right?
You can get one though.
You can
they're
get
cool
one.
to have. You're gonna want one eventually.
One day you're going to want one because the Master Cycle, the advanced jiu-jitsu program you will transition into upon Gracie Combatives completion, you will use a gi because we're going to teach you how to use their clothing against them in many different ways. But we didn't want your beginner journey to be contingent on what someone was wearing or not wearing, which is why Gracie Combatives is 100% no gi. All of the training gear, training mats, rash guard, spats, fight shorts, gi when you're ready, all of that is available at gracieuniversity.com in our online store. All right, friends. Done with the training tips. We'll see you in the next one. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu exists as both a highly effective system of self-defense that has been proven effective in real fights over the last 100 years, and it also exists as a recreational sport. Now, when we talk about sport jiu-jitsu, we're talking about two people that are grappling against each other, jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. We both speak the language and we're trying to solve each other's jiu-jitsu puzzles. Now, besides the fact that this engagement does not consider strikes, punches, kicks, elbows, headbutts, right, which are a huge consideration in a street fight, they're not considered in the sport of jiu-jitsu because they're largely illegal in traditional jiu-jitsu competition. Besides that fact, there's another element, which is for beginners. Sport jiu-jitsu can be incredibly discouraging and confusing because there are literally infinite number of ways in terms of how our bodies can come together and try to solve each other's puzzles. And like I said, for beginners, it can be very discouraging.
This is not to say that someone who practices sport jiu-jitsu for years won't be prepared for a street fight. They'll probably be okay.
But this is only if they don't quit and they stick around long enough to reach the high level of proficiency that would be necessary to make these skills effective in a real fight.
Sport jiu-jitsu is so complex and so intense for beginners that most people, especially the small, the weak, the unathletic, will quit within weeks or months of giving it a try.
And this is where the tragedy of all tragedies is born. Here you have the art that was designed to empower the weak against the strong, and it's largely inaccessible to the very people it was intended to serve. Not because jiu-jitsu isn't amazing, but because of how it's being taught to beginners. Listen to what Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers had to say about his beginning in sport BJJ.
I tried it 3 times in my life.
Yeah.
It hurt. It freaking hurt.
It's designed to hurt.
It hurt. Like, I liked it. But I was so competitive that I got home and I realized there was no skin on my feet from the mats.
Yeah.
Like, I have no technique.
Right.
So I'm just trying to muscle it, dig in. Hurt.
The key to learning jiu-jitsu is to learn how to play. Like the Gracies, they always have this phrase, like Henner Gracie and Huron Gracie, they say keep it playful.
Right.
And it's great advice. If you could really follow that advice, that's how you learn. Because you learn how to not muscle things, you learn how to only use technique and to have fun, and just to don't be crazy competitive. Know that you're going to get tapped out, know that you're going to tap other people. It's going to be fine. But if you just always try to win every time, you're not going to learn. You're going to be too tense. You're not going to open yourself up, so you're not going to take chances, so you're not going to learn as much.
Got to play.
Yeah, you got to keep it playful. Relax.
Joe is right, and Gracie Combatives is how we keep it playful for beginners.
Here at Gracie University and at all of our certified training centers around the world, the journey begins with 100% emphasis on street self-defense.
Now, what this means is we are preparing our students for the eventualities of real street fights and all that entails against an opponent or an attacker who doesn't do jiu-jitsu. And there are 3 very important reasons why we do this.
Number 1, context is king.
It sure is, you guys, especially for beginners. Sport jiu-jitsu in the beginning is so complex. It's so nuanced. We're talking about counters to counters to counters to counters. And this is what you need to be effective against someone else who does jiu-jitsu. But for someone who is beginning in the art of jiu-jitsu, this type of approach to teaching leaves them more confused than encouraged, to say the least. So let's say, for example, welcome to class, everyone. I'm Henner, this is my assistant, Hidon. We're gonna teach you a guard pass today from butterfly guard. So we're right here in closed guard, and Hidon is effective at breaking my closed guard. I'm trying to maintain and break posture, I can't. The moment he does, I'll post, I'll sit up, I'll insert my butterfly hooks, and I'll start to engage for my butterfly guard sweep right here. But before I do, watch what Hidon does for his pass.
So I need to get around his legs because they're very much tying me up. So I'm gonna feed his head under my arm, controlling his head. Now I control his posture. He can't lift his leg up. From here, I'm gonna put my hand on the ground and I'm gonna step off his leg as I move to the side. And now I've established side mount, which is where you wanna be.
So everyone go ahead and practice. You guys, imagine the new student who sees this, who came into this. What are the questions they might have if they just witnessed that right there? Tell me some questions they might have.
Why were his feet between his knees?
Oh yeah, why was I on my back to begin with this guy inside my legs? How do we even get to that position to begin with? Fights don't start like this. Nice to meet you. The fight starts with 2 people standing up in a debate or a discussion or an argument, right? So that's the first question, why are we in the guard? Second question is, what was he doing to open my legs? Why was he doing that? Why didn't he just punch me in the face? Third question is, what is butterfly guard? I love butterflies.
Did he say butterfly?
Yeah, I went to butterfly guard to do a sweep. Wait a minute, what is sweep? The mats look perfectly clean. Why are we sweeping anything that's already clean? And then Hidon talked about passing my butterfly guard, feeding my head into that front headlock, killing the butterfly hook, moving to the opposite side. And that's the whole point, you guys. Now, many of you who do jiu-jitsu right now are just giggling because you're like, yo, I saw all of that and I know that move. Fine, we're not talking to you guys. We're talking to the beginners who've never done jiu-jitsu. When they see that, the first question is, why am I doing this? And if they ask that question of themselves for enough classes, eventually the final big question is, why am I here? to what avail are we playing this game for? And when the student starts to question why they're doing something, and you compile on top of the fact that it's very discouraging, right? They're sparring, the grind of it. So not only is it kind of punishing physically and emotionally, it's also confusing. When you put those two together, they just fizzle off the mat. The number of people who've quit jiu-jitsu because of these components, especially the lack of context for beginners, the graveyards of jiu-jitsu lives and spirits that could have been but have died off into the wastelands exceed the number of people that are currently doing jiu-jitsu today. More people have tried jiu-jitsu and fallen off. I'd probably say 10 to 1. Let's be honest.
Maybe more.
10 to 1 I think is a good average, and this is just, right, anecdotally, just from looking at friends, and we've been in this industry now for 30 years teaching ourselves, and since we were little kids doing it, just seeing the attrition rate in jiu-jitsu, I think it's 10 to 1. And it's largely because of this confusion for beginners when there's no context, right? Like you said, there would be about 20 classes to make sense of that before that even made sense.
Yes. Now, imagine a class where I'm inside your guard.
Yes.
And I say, okay, today we're gonna teach you how to stay safe.
Boom.
If the person on top of you is trying to knock you out, we'll teach you how to stay safe if you find yourself on your back with someone between your legs.
Okay.
It doesn't matter who you are. You can say, you know what? It's actually possible that I find myself on my back underneath someone, and you need to know techniques to keep myself from getting knocked out.
And this is the whole point in Gracie Combatives. No single class presented to the student is so out of context that the student doesn't know why we're doing it. The very position and the very threat that we identify for that particular class is completely self-explanatory, right? So you're standing up, someone grabs you in a headlock. You're on the ground on your back, someone is trying to punch you from within your guard. Someone is on top of you in what's called the mount, where they have knees on either side of your hip and they're trying to strangle you. You don't have to have 15 classes to understand why it would be good to learn how to escape the mount. And then what happens is, in these techniques and these threats and these indicators that are perfectly logical and sound to the beginner student's mind, because it makes sense, because fights are pretty simple how they happen between untrained people, so the attack and the threats are very predictable. Once that's understood, the student learns a solution and they go, wow, that was very fun. That was very effective. It was easy and it was effective. And then guess what? They come back the next day. They learn another solution to another very common and relatable threat that could happen in a real fight. And at no time are they saying, why are we doing this? Never does that cross their mind as a beginner. So what happens over time with that repeated cycle, right?
You almost become addicted.
I love it.
To problem solving.
Yeah, you love the simple effectiveness of jiu-jitsu, and you know every day you come to class, you're gonna get your fix. You're gonna get your fix of like a new solution to an old problem of fighting, and you're gonna say, man, I wish I had this when I was a kid in high school. I got caught in this position, I didn't know what to do, right? Versus mini sport BJJ techniques where you can't even imagine where in your life that particular engagement that we just showed would apply. When would you need that? Now, I'm telling you right now, you need it every day when you're grappling sport jiu-jitsu, but
in a street fight, the chances of me using that guard pass that I just showed,
butterfly guard pass,
maybe 1 in 100,000. Now,
using it between two grappling practitioners
once a week.
It might be every week, once in 100 engagements, we're doing it. So you guys can see, just statistically, it doesn't make sense to waste the time on the techniques that are gonna be used 1 in 1,000. So back to the point, students become addicted to the contextually sound practice of jiu-jitsu, right? The simple, effective techniques solving problems versus becoming deterred by the confusion, the lack of context, and the constant asking of why am I doing this, which is so commonly associated with the beginning in sport jiu-jitsu.
Number 2, we play the odds.
Based on the fact that less than 0.05% of the human population has ever tried a jiu-jitsu class, there's a 99.95% chance that if you get into a street fight and are attacked, that the attacker will not be a student or practitioner of jiu-jitsu. Now, that being the case, the question is, what techniques should we teach beginners? Should we focus on the hundreds, really the thousands of techniques that exist, the sport jiu-jitsu techniques that you would need to be effective in a jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu grappling match? Or should we focus on the 36 techniques that we've identified over the last 100 years for being the ones that are most likely to be necessary in a street fight against someone who doesn't do jiu-jitsu and most effective in that street fight encounter?
Another way to look at this is that if any one of you had 6 months to practice jiu-jitsu and you could not practice anything beyond 6 months.
Done.
You could only do 6 months. What would you want to learn in those 6 months?
Right.
You want to learn a handful of techniques that will help keep you safe in a self-defense situation? Or do you want to be introduced to 1% of all the techniques that exist that we use in this sportive game of jiu-jitsu?
Right, and the risk is if you're investing all that time, the limited time that you have in the vast number of techniques, the likelihood that any one of those techniques would be necessary if you got into a fight for your life is very low. So for us, it's just playing the odds. With all of our beginners, we've answered this question for them. Learn Gracie Combatives in the beginning. Master these techniques, and if you can never train again, at least you know your time was well spent on the techniques you will absolutely need in a real fight. Now, if you're lucky enough to have the privilege to keep training beyond 6, 7, 8 months, a year, and the journey becomes a lifelong one for you in jiu-jitsu, guess what? You will eventually transition to the master cycle and learn hundreds, eventually thousands of techniques, and even invent your own that would help you in that jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu encounter. Our concern is if you quit in 6 months or in 3 months, no time between now and then can be wasted on anything other than that which you would need to save your life against a violent aggressor who doesn't speak the language of jiu-jitsu.
Number 3, confidence and connection over chaos.
Friends, when the emphasis in the beginning is sport jiu-jitsu, it is chaotic and injuries are so common. Fair to say that injuries in the beginning are the number one reason why people quit jiu-jitsu and never give it a second chance, right? You have to think about it. It makes perfect sense. You have 2 white belts, right? Maybe these 2 adults have never done a sport since they were in high school, which might have been 15 or 20 years ago. Now they want to try jiu-jitsu because they heard about it on a podcast or they saw the UFC. They show up, the coach is like, cool, you're both beginners, you're both white belts, you 2 spar or roll. Now you got 2 white belts who don't know anything about anything, who are sparring against each other, who are pulling on limbs, twisting bodies, laying on top of each other, moving their bodies in a way that they may have never done so before in their adult lives. The number of bruised ribs, twisted elbows, jammed fingers, busted lips, right? It's goes on and on and on, you guys. It's nuts. It's actually crazy.
If you're sparring as a beginner, the question is not if, but when you get injured.
And how badly you get injured. And if that injury knocks you out completely from jiu-jitsu, or if you tough through it and you get back on the mat and you keep grinding it out for the eventual hope that you reach the graceland of, okay, now it makes sense. Now I know how to move my body in a way that is safe enough to avoid injury. But man, you may not even get there if the beginning is so tumultuous. Now, in Gracie Combatives, the training partners are learning the core fundamental techniques of jiu-jitsu for defense against a street fight opponent. And the training partners are working with each other in these exercises versus against each other. That is so common for beginners in sport jiu-jitsu. And this collaboration happens. They're learning the basics. I'm feeding him the indicators. I'm trying to be a collaborator, and we're building this relationship on the mat. And because of this, we're developing a comfort with the core concepts, the core positions of jiu-jitsu, the core understandings to help with an effective and safe transition into the master cycle. Now, in master cycle, we spar. Just like any other sport jiu-jitsu school, the sparring begins and the intensity gets turned up. However, because the training partners have learned some core concepts like body position, what is mount, what are these different positions, what does tapping mean and how to tap, when is my body in a dangerous position where I could potentially hurt myself or my partner, because you learn those core safe practicing concepts in Gracie Combatives, when you're sparring in the master cycle with these understandings, you're exponentially less likely to hurt yourself or your training partner from just not knowing what you're doing, which is so common as early beginners in sport jiu-jitsu.
So you said it, they're gonna spar. We want them to spar.
You're gonna get there.
But we want you to spar when it makes sense.
Right.
And that's what we've learned is that it's very, very easy for someone to say to someone who's their 3rd day, you can spar because it's also that person's fourth day. You guys are the same level. No.
Listen, and
it requires a lot more. And that's what you're talking about, the connections.
A lot of schools
the
just
understanding.
A lot of schools, what they do is they try to rely on the sink or swim aspect of jiu-jitsu. Figure it out. Figure it out. Just spar and figure it out. And you will figure it out. Some people will. Right? But most people won't. They will quit before they figure it out because of injury or embarrassment or not being good enough. So then that's once again pointing back to the sad reality of the people who need jiu-jitsu the most, the small, the weak, the unathletic, right? They're typically the nail, not the hammer in these sparring sessions. They just fade off the mat. And then what you end up with is a population of students at the school where it's super intense training from day one. You end up with a population of tough guys and girls, right? And all the other people who need it the most are nowhere to be found. And the teacher's like, wow, I wonder why we can't grow our school that much. It's because all the people who you should have on your mats are not safe or welcome because of these training practices.
This idea of figuring it out. How long, right, is someone willing to be the nail for to figure it out?
How long are you willing to suffer every day?
I would say after like a month,
Yeah.
after 15, 20 classes, you're like, you know what? What you tell yourself is that I can't figure it out.
Or why am I doing this? This is not my profession. This is not my profession. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a school teacher, I'm a house mom, house dad.
It's not safe.
Why am I gonna go to this if
a
the chance of
liability.
injury is so high? Why do I gonna keep subjecting myself to this? And that's the whole point. Self-defense as a foundation for beginners allows us to train together for an enemy who isn't in the room. The enemy's out there. In sport jiu-jitsu, your enemy is your training partner because the counters to counters to counters to counters are only necessary for that person. So that's the difference, you guys. With Gracie Combatives, the enemy is not in the room. We are working together to prepare for a third party who may one day enter our lives. And yes, we can increase the intensity gradually, but only at a pace that is safe and comfortable for the practitioner so that they keep getting encouraged and keep building their confidence on the path towards eventual complete street readiness. Now, another benefit of Gracie Combatives as a foundation for several months before transitioning into the master cycle where sparring will happen at varying levels of intensity is the relationships that are built. The bonds, the friendships. Now, this is very true in a group learning environment as well as private. You're training at home in your garage, but in a group learning environment, how true is it that our students who do Gracie Combatives with their friends, right? They're two white belts, they sign up at the same day or the same week or month, and they know each other for several months. 8 months later, they finish Gracie Combatives, they move into the master cycle. And now, in master cycle, they're gonna spar with their training partner, the same person that they were working with. Now they're gonna compete against in that grappling encounter, and they're gonna go. How different is that engagement between two people who built that friendship over so many months on the mat versus first day, nice to meet you. What's your name? Ryan? My name's Henry. Nice to meet you, Ryan.
It's almost like you are in my way to becoming the best version of myself.
Yes.
So I need to get through you.
Yeah, I'm just a stepping stone.
To prove to the coach that I'm better so I can be, who knows, awarded a promotion.
And the coach may have never said this. You may make, that's your interpretation.
You made it up.
The point is, they're fighting against each other from day one and we don't know each other. Imagine the emotion and the pride and the anxiety around that grappling and sparring encounter versus, hey bro, dude, we've been friends for 9 months. Now we're gonna roll right now. So we're still gonna go hard against each other. But it's the difference between two friends rolling after 8, 9, 10 months of familiarity and bonding over learning Gracie Combatives versus two strangers sparring for superiority, dominance, and recognition from the teacher, right? Imagine the difference in the likelihood of injury in those two cases. And because of this, what else?
It's as if someone who starts self-defense stays self-defense.
I love that.
And not only for yourself, but for your training partner.
Right.
When I'm training with you, I care about you. I want to protect you.
And that makes a big difference when you're sparring if the other person prioritizes your safety over their victory. And once you understand this approach, you guys, and the commitment that we have to this type of safe and structured beginning for jiu-jitsus, it's no wonder why the injury rates amongst our students, even in the master cycle where they're sparring, are infinitesimal when compared to other traditional sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools where the students are ripping at each other's necks from their first day in the beginner class. So this is why Gracie Combatives, if you're a beginner to Jiu-Jitsu, you're new to the art, this is why Gracie Combatives is the best introduction to Jiu-Jitsu ever scripted. right, that you could possibly imagine, not just because it's street self-defense, but because of these other elements that we're talking about, right? The idea of building that connection, that confidence, the idea that statistically, you're likely to use the techniques against someone who doesn't know jiu-jitsu first in a street fight, and then of course, the context, how important it is that when you're learning techniques, every single lesson in Gracie Combatives will make perfect sense to you before we move on to the next technique.
Now, what Henner said makes sense, especially if this is your introduction to jiu-jitsu. However, over the past 13 years, many students have come to Gracie Combatives with extensive sport jiu-jitsu experience because they wanted to add a self-defense foundation to their skill set, one that might not have been available at the school they originally trained at.
If this is you, welcome to the family. We know thousands of complex techniques, but we could not imagine life on this earth without the 36 techniques in Gracie Combatives.
If I was gonna get in a fight right now, outside, in 1 minute, you can throw away all the hundreds of moves that I know that helped me defeat
Not
Henner.
hundreds, bro. Thousands.
But don't throw away the 36.
There you go, you guys. We're so happy to have you on board, and we can't wait for you to enjoy the confidence and the clarity that Gracie Combatives gives us and so many hundreds of thousands of students around the world. Unlike most other Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructional series, it's not good enough for us to simply put out amazing techniques and amazing content. That's not what we want. That's just half of it. Verifying that you actually learned the material is how we close the loop.
Because the skills are so important, dude. They're so important to learn.
Don't you want to know that you actually know and own the material?
Yes.
Isn't that half of your confidence? Half is from learning, the other half is from knowing. So we respect that. So we've gone to unmatched lengths to make it possible for you to have your skill sets verified. And there is an official Gracie Combatives test that you can take. This test can be taken at one of hundreds of certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training centers all over the world. You can go do it in person, which is amazing. You would be doing it under the watchful eye of a certified instructor who would run you through the test and verify that you own all the material. But it's also possible to do this test using our video evaluation process.
Also through the watchful eye of a certified instructor.
Yes, 2 certified instructors, 1 primary, 1 approver, kind of senior instructor verifier. The point is, you guys, when you complete Gracie Combatives and you own and have all the muscle memory, you'll have the chance to digitally record yourself performing 5 Gracie Combatives proficiency drills, very specifically outlined and demonstrated at the end of the course. And then upload those 5 videos to gracieuniversity.com in our online testing center. And those are going to come through, an instructor will be notified, and they will evaluate just as they would if you were there in person. And man, is it beautiful.
100 points
Yep.
is where we start on the grading scale.
Yes, sir.
100 points, and we allow no more than 10
No more than 10 critical
mistakes.
Right, no more than 10 critical mistakes. So we're going to give you time-coded notes on exactly what you did wrong, if anything. And if you pass, you're going to earn your Gracie Combatives belt. And if you have more than 10 critical mistakes, you'll get a full detailed report of where all those mistakes were so that you can patch up the holes, brush up, ultimately improve your jiu-jitsu, and then resubmit that test at a later date. Now, what's amazing is, regardless of the result, taking the test is one of the best ways to kind of brush up on your skill set. So if you don't pass the first time, no big deal. You just have a chance to get, it's almost like a private class. Like imagine if you were here demonstrating and we could just say, hey, very good, but do this, do that. We're just correcting what we see to be the deviations from the techniques. And that's powerful, even if it's done on person or if it's done online through the detailed report that you're gonna get with your submission.
Now, some people will do exceptionally well and they will score 95%
or higher.
Or higher.
Yeah,
And
if
if you do that, you qualify for the instructor certification program.
And the ICP, the Gracie Combatives Instructor Certification, is the first step towards learning the skills and earning the credentials that would allow you to teach jiu-jitsu professionally in your community to other beginners and other people who want to learn this amazing skill. Presumably that has changed your life in a positive way. And if it's truly changed your life for the better, you're like, man, I want I want to change other people's lives as well. The Gracie Combatives ICP is how you're going to accomplish that. But in order to qualify, you're exceptionally high scoring on the Gracie Combatives test, which means no more than 5 critical mistakes. And again, aim for 100%.
Yes.
And regardless of the outcome, you're going to get great feedback nonetheless.
Maybe do a practice test before you test.
Yes. All right. So one thing to keep in mind as well is the bonus techniques.
36 bonus
slices. You will not be tested on them. So just remember, you're going through the techniques. You're going to have a fun time learning all these amazing techniques. But as you're completing the curriculum, when we say bonus slice, learn it, love it, practice it. But know that on the test, we will not call that technique from you. Now, if you include the bonus slices in your practice, especially during your 5th drill, which is your freestyle fight simulation drill, where you put them all together, if you happen to use them, great. But they're not required to be individually demonstrated during your first 4, which are the technical kind of proficiency drills for all the Gracie combative techniques, are 4 drills. And then the 5th one is that freestyle fight simulation drill. Anyways, you won't be asked to demonstrate your bonus slices throughout that. Excellent. At the end of the course, we demonstrate fully the Gracie Combatives test. All 5 Gracie Combatives proficiency drills. We show you it's an open book test. It's right there, exactly what we expect of you. So one option is before you even begin with the Gracie Combatives program, lesson number 1, you go to the end and you watch the test. All of it from start to finish. It's only 25 minutes long. And after watching it, you're gonna go, all right, that's awesome. Yeah. How are they gonna feel when they see what they're gonna be capable of?
Oh, they're gonna feel inspired.
You're gonna love it.
They're gonna be fired up.
You're gonna love it. You know what it's comparable to? When you're doing a jigsaw puzzle and you look at the box.
Yes.
And you see the image of the massive Jurassic era dinosaur landscape. And you go, yeah, this might take me 17 days, or in your case, 216 days. But I love this picture. That's what it is. When you see the test, you go, oh my gosh, it really is beautiful what I'm going to be capable of. You're going to get so fired up, and then you jump back over here and you go in, lesson number 1, slice number 1, fully committed because you have the end in mind. And one of my mentors once told me it's always good to begin with the end in mind. So watching the test first and foremost, we won't condemn you. We actually encourage it to get you excited about it. If it seems overwhelming, like, wow, that's a lot of techniques. Don't worry. The way we slice it, the way we've organized the curriculum, you're guaranteed to learn all of it if you just follow the training schedule, follow the slicing format, dedicate with your training partners, and you show up and you practice. You ultimately do the work. Are they ready?
They're ready.
All right, you guys, let's do it. Next is our positional reference so that you know all the core positions and language and terms that we're going to use throughout the course. And then after that, it's lesson number 1. Here we go. All right, friends, positional index. What is this? It's a video in which we are going to demonstrate some of the most important positions of jiu-jitsu and also some core concepts that'll be referred throughout the entire program. It's really going to help you understand the language of jiu-jitsu so that when we say something like shrimp or breakfall or guard or clinch, you'll know what we're talking about. And we want to begin with the concept of base and how to stand up in base. Something that will be expected of you in every single lesson. If at any point in the lesson you stand up, you need to stand up in base. And in your Gracie Combatives test, if you fail to stand up in base at any point, you're gonna lose a point. So it's a requirement that you're always in base. Base isn't a technique, base is a mindset, it's a preparedness. You're always stable in your structure, in your balance. So Hidon will show us the standard base get-up technique. You can practice with us as we go through it here. Check this out.
So both knees up like this, arms around, and you fold one leg under and put both hands on the side of the leg that is folded down. With weight on your hands and your foot, lift your hips up and put your hips down. One more time. Hips up, hips down. Now watch me first. Heavy hands, I step and I get up. And I did that by putting my head forward and my hips up into the air. So as my head goes forward and my hips lift up, my knee goes outside my elbow and I land in this strong base.
And the benefit of that is if I'm standing over Hidon when he stands up and he's off balance, I can push him down. But in the course of a fight, if he gets up in base, he's not going to get pushed back down. And the benefit is he's perpendicular to meet. So the base is only powerful if Hidon's legs are perpendicular to mine. If he's parallel, look, where he has a great base, but he's off balance that way because our feet are in perpendicular lines or parallel lines in that case.
So one more time, everyone.
Always perpendicular.
Sitting like this one more time. Go ahead and fold your leg under and put one hand on the ground. Keep one right here. And go ahead and move a little bit like this. Move on your hip. Maybe you have somebody standing over you and they're moving. And as they're moving, your front knee, the top knee right here, is kind of in line with that person. And then when you feel ready, both hands on the ground, head forward, hips up, knee outside your elbow. Most common mistake is knee inside the elbow. Head down, hips up, allows knee outside. Your hands are the last thing off the ground.
Another very common mistake is people will do everything right, but they'll step so far from their hand that they can't take their hands off the ground. So you actually need that bottom leg to step out and replace your hand so you can easily take your hands off the ground. You can do one hand on the ground, you can do two hands on the ground. If you have pre-existing hip or knee injuries, you can do it to where you go to your knee first. So my bottom leg, look, I do this, I put my knee up, and then I wedge my toes, and then from my toes, I roll it up, and I build up. If you have really tight hips or it's unstable terrain that you're doing it on, you might need to modify your get up there.
You can also put your hands a little further back, push off your feet, and get some distance. So look how my foot is here. I'm gonna jump. So I probably travel, 2.5 feet right there. So jumping back as opposed to standing up and your foot is still right there.
Especially if an attacker is standing right over you, getting that distance can be very helpful. So other variations, if you're on your knees, you guys, if you ever find yourself kneeling at any point during a class, or during your life, and you have to stand up, instead of doing this, where you're very unstable on your elevation, hands down or fist down, look, and I'm in base. And if there's an incoming force or pushing energy, I want to be perpendicular to that incoming energy so that I have base perpendicular to that, that force, and I don't get pushed back down. So very important concept, right? We can see it from a mile away. Does someone get up in base or not? And you might even modify where you're here and but we can see, that was base conscious versus you fall down and you're getting up during a class and it's just clear that you're not conscious of your base. And since we want you guys to be always getting up in base, we're going to require it of you. So when we practice lessons, we'll remind you, but in your tests, we won't remind you. You just have to get up in base all the time, 100%. It's the new way that you get up all the time. And if you want to do like our house, you can set up a policy where you have to get up in base. And if you don't get up in base at the house, you have to do it 5 times.
So if you're by yourself and you get up to go get a glass of water and you're sitting on the floor in your living room and you don't get up in base,
5 times.
Sit back down. Do it 5 times.
Yes. And if you do that at my house where you get up out of base and you get up, I'm going to push you back down. You don't even get up. Wow. I'll just kick you on the way up so you'll fall back down. So if this is how it was in the Gracie family growing up, very encouraging.
No, it wasn't.
No, we got checked on the way up. Trust me, if we didn't get up in base, we would get held down.
Yeah, we
forgot. It was this. Go, stand up. It was, hey, go, get up,
hey,
get up.
Yeah, it happened twice, and then you never do it wrong
Then
again.
you always get up right for the rest of your life. The point is, there's ways to ingrain these lessons. All right.
Shrimp.
Another concept you're going to hear is shrimp. And we are, in terms of the food, it's whatever's. We're not the biggest fans, but,
So
whatever.
shrimp is the idea of moving your hips, moving yourself. Sometimes there's somebody over you and you want to move yourself out from underneath them to create space. So there's this shrimp drill that we do where you go to your side a little bit with both feet on the ground and your shoulder on the ground, you move your hips back. So my hips are moving. Notice how my feet kind of adjust. My hips lift, hips shoot back. My feet adjust, hips lift, hips shoot back. We can also do a drill where you do it from side to side. So one leg is straight, one leg is bent. I turn to the side of the straight leg using my foot and my shoulder. They both hold the ground as my hips lift up and out. I'm gonna exaggerate on my lift just so you can see. And then I straighten back up. And now I turn to the other side. Roll to my side, weight on my foot, weight on my shoulder, hips lift up and back. So that's the traditional way that we learned as kids growing up. But a shrimp circle is also a very good way for
Especially
you to
in confined
understand.
space. It's just go, keep going.
Yeah.
In confined space, look, if Hidon can do a full 360 with 3 or 4 big shrimps, look, boom, hips shooting back. The key is you're on your side, you're moving your hips back, and your shoulder is your pivot point. As long as your shoulder stays and your hips are retracting, you are shrimping. And there's just different ways of practicing that, but a very, very important term and movement in jiu-jitsu, particularly for the mobility principle, which is going to be highly used in several of our techniques. Now, break falls. In terms of breaking falls, there's going to be many techniques where you're falling to the ground. If not as the person doing the technique, you're breaking the fall as the person getting the technique done to you.
Yes.
So you might be the recipient of a technique. This is how we're going to teach you to break fall.
Just sitting like this, we're going to roll back, and with our relaxed arms, as our body hits the ground, our arms slap the ground, keeping your chin tucked and your head off the ground. So roll back slowly and break the fall.
And the slap helps kind of dissipate the impact of a fall. That's why people slap the ground when they fall, because instead of it all hitting your body, the slap kind of takes some of the energy of the descent and makes your body impact reduced and make sure your head doesn't hit the ground.
Just be aware of this. Like, people go like this. The hand hit way before the body rolled out, or as well, or this. So there's a timing. As you roll, it almost kind of all happens simultaneously. So you can do the same thing from standing. So I get up in base, I do a slight knee bend, and as my hips hit, they roll, and I break the fall. So that's a straight back break fall. Slight base, bend your knees, roll back, and break fall.
As you get better, do that again and do it from higher. Don't bend your knees so much. Watch.
Don't bend your
only
knees.
Only 20% bend right there and fall.
Here.
See that? See how his legs were almost straight. He barely bent his knees. Do that again. So this is Hito now landing on his hips, rolling, and then look, breaking the fall. So that's if his legs were more extended during a takedown or something, he could fall and still be effective. So the point is, the more you bend your knees when you fall, the softer the landing's going to be. The straighter your legs are, the higher platform from which you are falling, the more you're going to need to dissipate that fall. But like Hito said, don't catch your hands on the ground or your elbows. When I was a little kid, like 9 or 10 years old playing soccer, I jumped and I grabbed on the goalpost and I fell back. And my break fall was not, got up in base by the way, my break fall was not very good, and I fell like this. And I went boom, and I caught myself with my hands, and this broke completely, and both bones came out, blood everywhere. So I had a compound fracture of my arm right here because I caught my weight with my hands versus boom, catching it. Now I was so upside down in my fall that I was gonna land on my head. So I put my hands back to not let my head hit the ground. It was a very nasty upside down. But point being, as you descend, keeping your arms tucked, letting your head stay tucked, and palms down is the way to go.
They're going to all break fall now correctly because of that story.
There you go. So let's talk about positions now. The mount in jiu-jitsu. Critical position, and one that we're going to reference from the very first lesson. Okay, and mount is, right, kind of, is indicated by the fact that my knees are on the outside of Hiton's hips. I am over the top of his waist, and my knees are on either side of his hips. This is called the mount. In terms of positional advantages, Hito has very limited power and striking range from here. I have a lot of reach, power, and leverage because I have gravity on my side. Top mount, bottom mount. Offensive or advantageous or superior mount, inferior, disadvantageous. You don't want to be here. This is not a good position to be in, really in any sense. Now, getting comfortable here is a great skill and aspiration, but just because you're comfortable doesn't mean it's good to be there. So generally speaking, if you're on the bottom of the mount, all you're focusing on is staying safe and looking to make your escape as quickly as possible, okay? Now, from the mount, a very common behavior for the bottom person who doesn't know what they're doing in the escape is to roll, turn over. And when they do, this top person may transition to what's called a back mount. I'm on the back mount now, where I'm behind Hito, knees outside of his hips, and I have access to his head. There are strangle or choke opportunities from back here. Very powerful, even more concerning for Hito than the regular mount because I can attack the back of his head and he can't block behind his head because his hands don't bend that way. Now, if he's here, he's good to go back mount, belly down. He may also get up. If he does, this is called back mount, but I have hooks. So now I have hooks that are attaching me to Hito's thighs, and it's a slightly different back mount. Now, we might roll over, and now I'm still on Hito's back mount. Even though he's on top of me, I still have his back, and I still have the advantage, right? But this is kind of, we'll call it a supine back mount. So I'm in the offensive or back mount position. He's in the defensive back mount position. But I'm in the supine back mount where we're on our backs looking up versus a prone back mount, which is what this might be considered with hooks or without hooks. Okay, so back mount, again, very, very concerning position for the defendant. Very advantageous for us. If we're doing jiu-jitsu or fighting someone, we want to achieve mount, we want to achieve back mount, and we want to avoid the inferior counterparts in both of those positions. Excellent. We also have side mount. So instead of me being mounted Hito over the top like this, okay, with both knees over his body, side mount is when you're here, off to one side, both legs on one side, chest to chest, in this position right here. Okay, also called side control, okay, side mount, positional control, neck hug, underarm, this is kind of the basic hand configuration, or you might see something like this, but in either case, side mount is when your chest is on the person and both legs are off to one side. if they know what they're doing. If this person doesn't know jiu-jitsu, they can still be kind of here hitting and attacking. We'll still reference this as side mount, even though it's kind of like an amateur use of the position because they're not using good body weight. But nonetheless, because both knees are on one side of the body, it'll be generally categorized as side mount. And from here, they might try to attack you. They might try to grab you in a headlock. There are many positions for which we're going to learn, many techniques or threats for which we're going to learn solutions from the bottom, and many techniques we're going to learn from top of side mount, how to control someone, because it's a very, very powerful control position.
And if I'm on the bottom, the side mount's probably a little bit safer.
A little better
Even
than full
though
mount.
he has a little more control than full mount, most people, an unskilled person in side mount can do a better job controlling me than someone from the mount. Now, from the side mount, he can also put more weight on me, and thinking about like the bottom personally, if I had to choose, I'd much rather have somebody side mounted on me in a street fight than in the full mount.
There you go. So it's a little less bad for Hidon if I'm side mounted. However, whether I'm mounted on him or whether I'm side mounted on him, none of those compare to the level of goodness, the level of amazingness that the guard will bring Hidon if he's on the bottom of the fight. And we saved this position for the last of the ground positions we want to articulate because it's the most important one that you understand. I'm now inside Hidon's guard. This is kind of characterized by the fact that Hidon's legs are around my waist, whereas previously in the mount, my legs were around his waist. If you just look at this position as who's on top and who's on bottom, it looks like the same as the mount, same as whatever position. It's not. Hidon has control of my body now, and there are so many techniques in jiu-jitsu. The guard is truly the secret weapon of jiu-jitsu. There are so many techniques Hidon's going to learn, and we're going to learn with you from the bottom position here that will allow us to stay safe, neutralize punches, ultimately apply submissions, apply reversals, also known as sweeps, where you're sweeping someone and kind of reversing them from top to bottom. So you're going to learn all kinds of techniques from here, all made possible by the simple fact that I'm inside Hidon's guard. So if you're on the bottom of the fight, if you must be on the bottom, your goal is to get the person in the guard because from here, everything is possible. The easiest way to explain this is from the mount. Look, when I'm mounted, I have really 2 arms and 2 legs attacking Hidon's.
Attacking and controlling.
Yeah, attacking and controlling Hidon's 2 arms. All he has is 2 and I have 4. Right? And I have gravity, so 5 to 2 in terms of my attack advantage here. When I'm in the guard, look, Hidon has 1, 2, 3, 4. Look, and all I have is these 2. And I still have gravity, so we'll give it 3. But Hidon has 4 against 3.
Yeah. And I have the angles to attack.
There you go.
Which is huge.
Because his legs are around my body. Yes. So it gives him greater control and much greater opportunities. So moral of the story, guard is your best friend. When you see someone on the bottom of the fight, don't judge them because they're on the bottom. Determine, are they on the bottom in the guard, where Hidon is now, or are they on the bottom of mount or side mount? And this is so important that you understand this language because we are going to make references to these techniques and positions. But it's also important because when you land in a position during a fight, you have to first do a quick diagnostic. Where am I? Am I mounted on this person? Am I in their guard? Am I on the bottom of the mount? Am I in the bottom of the guard? Because once you effectively classify the position that you're in, only then can you effectively diagnose which technique you should resort to for the next step to give greater control, greater survivability, or a submission opportunity.
And even though there's so much for me to do on the bottom of the guard, just speak very briefly. If we end up on top of the guard and we're inside someone's legs, there are many benefits. One is that you can, assuming that the person on the bottom doesn't know anything, they won't cross their feet in most cases. So he has the advantage to be able to advance from here, which we'll discuss later, as well as how to disengage from the top of the guard. The fact that his back is off the ground is a good thing. And if the person does cross their feet, we'll also address that in future lessons.
Excellent. The last kind of big picture concept we want to talk about position-wise is the clinch. So if Hidon is standing up here with me, we're going to say this term clinch. And clinch, all that really means is close, grabbed position. We're in the clinch. We're grabbing each other. This is not a clinch from here, right? Clinch is, when we say clinch, it just means here. It could mean here. It could mean here. It could mean, rear clinch. You could be behind the person in a rear clinch.
So you need to close the distance to establish the clinch.
There you go. So you're going to grab a hold of the adversary. And the benefit of this really ultimately has to do with, number one, it's easier to get them to the ground. And number two, or really number one, is that you're less knockoutable when you are in the clinch. Whereas from a further distance, greater punches are possible against you, which brings us to this concept called the punch power scale. Okay, and this is the last thing we want to share with you guys before we begin with lesson number 1. The punch power scale is a very unique thing to understand as you enter this jiu-jitsu journey, because you are going to be in close contact with another person as you practice and as you use these techniques in combat. You're going to be in close proximity to them, grappling distance. From that grappling distance, from that grappling range, they can strike. They will be able to strike you. And to me, what makes jiu-jitsu superior than really every other martial art on the planet is the understanding of this punch power scale. So, how is the easiest way? The way we see it is this. Every punch in a fight exists on a scale from 1 to 10. If a punch gets thrown, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or a 10. It's somewhere in there. And the punch power score on that scale is determined by a few variables we'd like to share with you, okay? So, for example, if I'm on top in Hidon's guard, and we're inside this close range right here, and let's say that with that hand, he's trying to punch my head or shoulder or reaching around the corner right there. See, really it's his wrist. Only thing is free is his wrist. And with that free wrist right there, he's able to hit my shoulder. That's a level 1. Okay, he might be trying to really hurt me, but it doesn't matter because it has no power. Because there's only one joint is being used in the strike right there, okay? Versus if I was like this, for example, and he's now hitting with his hand, look at that. That's a level 2 punch in my head. Boom, boom, boom. Look. 2 joints, wrist and elbow, are activated. Okay? It's possible, however, that he gets to a level 3. Look, boom, there's a level 3 punch. Now it's 1, 2, 3 joints are involved in the punch. Then there's a level 4, which is if I sit up further and he's rotating his body, see how he's able to twist his hips, how much more power he can generate? Because this, as well as the shoulder and the elbow and the wrist, 4 joints are involved. And then from here, if I were to sit up, look, boom, boom, that's called a level 5 punch.
Same 4 joints.
Same 4 joints, but I have gravity on my side as well. So 4 joints, which is 1, hips twisting, 2, 3, 4, plus gravity equals a level 5 punch. Now, levels 6 through 10 are punches where the opponents are essentially standing in an optimal position because they can now connect to the ground. And the ground really does double the power of any punch because you can throw your weight behind it. So levels 6 through 10 on the punch power scale are punches that are thrown standing from an optimal distance of striking because they're able to have their free mobility and their rotation, bring their hips to the ground, their legs, their rotation. And whether a punch is a 6 or 7, or 8, or 9, or a 10 is only a function of who's throwing the punch. So level 6 through 10 are all optimal standing punches. But someone who's out of shape, very slow, very weak, throws their best punch standing up, it's only going to affect you as a 6. Whereas Mike Tyson in his prime throws that hook of his, that's a level 10 punch, okay? So why do you need to know all of this? Because in jiu-jitsu, particularly in the Gracie Combatives course, it is our top priority to eliminate non-existent, all 5s and above. They don't happen. We don't even talk about them. They don't even happen. There's not permitted. The distance will not be allowed.
Standing and on the ground.
Yeah, 5 is the ground. Distance, perfect
Yes.
punch from here. Boom. Nothing. Go ahead, do it again.
Gravity can't.
We're always going to disrupt our opponent's distance so that 5s and above literally don't happen. Distance management, positioning, push them out, pull them in, all of those components you're going to learn, all these principles of survivability, you're going to learn throughout the lessons. But the point is, when we talk about the punch power scale, the purpose of jiu-jitsu is to eliminate 5s and above because we don't allow the distance to exist from which those punches would be possible.
So on the ground, and even going back to the clinch conversation.
Yes.
When we're standing up and we clinch somebody.
Look,
there are no more 5s from the clinch.
Look, if
even
I clinch
though they're
Hidon,
standing.
Boom, if I clinch Hidon, now punch.
All I have is my
let's call
1,
it
2, 3.
Yeah, that's called a little 3. Look,
I'm not even using my body rotation. All I have is my arm. 3 joints.
Those are 3s. There you go. So, going back down. So Hidon's right. Standing up. Those are pretty much non-existent because we're going to close the distance and we're going to teach you how to do that. From the ground, the goal is to minimize 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Okay, like greatly. And especially for 3s and 4s, really, really minimize. Eliminate 5s and above. 3s and 4s, great minimization. And 1s and 2s, what we'll often realize is they're kind of always possible. I can't stop Hidon's wrist. You see, I can't stop that. I can't stop his hand from punching around the corner. It's very hard. But here's the beautiful part about 1s and 2s, is they're often more exhausting and depleting for the person throwing them than they are damaging to the recipient. And what makes jiu-jitsu so amazing in the context of the punch power scale is that we can position ourselves in ways where, go ahead, punch hard. You can't. Punch, 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 punch. Where he cannot deploy his most powerful punching assets, but I can deploy my most powerful submissions. Go, punch, punch, punch. This is a level 10 strangulation against level 1 and 2 punches.
Yes.
So that's why jiu-jitsu wins. That's why we cheat. That's why jiu-jitsu reigns supreme. Is because from a distance where their most powerful assets are non-existent or ineffective, we can deploy our most valuable and effective assets, our submissions. So while he's in range for only 1s, 2s, and 3s, I'm in submission range, which is all my 9s and 10s in terms of submission comparison. My best submissions are all beautifully applicable from that close range where those punches are no longer possible from. This, if you had to pin down one thing, is why we cheat. It's how we cheat in fights. And the thing is, the average street fight opponent who does not know submissions or their counters only knows this, violence and strikes. And this is true for kicks and knees as well, right? There's 1 through 10 on kicks and 1 through 10 on knees. The point is, all strikes, right, fall into this category. They need a certain distance. And the point is, the street fight opponent who relies entirely on their strikes and their power and their aggressiveness, when they're put in that close range and those strikes are no longer effective, what do they have left? Which is why, with very little jiu-jitsu training, 36 techniques, you can neutralize a violent aggressor who relies entirely on strikes, and then you can return fire with level 10 submissions from a range where you're simply not exposed to their most powerful assets.
Understanding the punch power scale is going to really help so that when you're in a position and your training partner, or even in a real fight, when someone starts to punch you, you can rest assured that that punch is only a 2. Because if you don't understand the punch power scale and someone is delivering a 2 or a 3 to the side of your head or hitting your shoulder, you can very easily overreact to that 2 or 3 and let go of head control, for example, or open up your legs. And then because you overreacted, now you've lost control of your attacker, and now all of a sudden they're bringing in 5s, which are so much more dangerous. So we really want you to understand that punches will happen. No matter what, you cannot avoid punches.
Can't avoid punches.
But you can avoid, like you said, the 5, 6, 7, 8 through 10. Those are the ones we want to avoid because those are the ones that we run the risk of being knocked out from.
Those are the fight enders.
You're not going to get knocked out from a 2 or 3. It's very unlikely. There's not enough power behind the 2 or 3. And we see it all the time where people just, because fighting is something that is so new to so many people, they get hit with the 3 and it's like, everything falls apart. No, know where your punch lies on the punch power scale.
There you go. So the only thing we want to avoid as eagerly as 5s and above is the misclassification of 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Because the misclassification triggers the overreaction, and the overreaction creates the 5s and 6, 7, 8, 9s, and 10s. So that's why we're having this talk this early. Punches will happen during the fight. Classify them correctly, and don't worry about them. Trust the techniques, trust the distance, and you're gonna do just fine. All right, you guys, we've talked enough. You are ready. Whether you believe it or not, you are ready to embark on this journey with us. Trust the system, trust the structure of the lessons, practice when we tell you to practice, watch when we tell you to watch, follow us all the way through this. We've built what we believe to be the perfect beginner jiu-jitsu path. And now that you understand the basic terminology, the basic positions, basic movements of base and shrimping and break fall, and you speak this language of the punch power scale, it's kind of, you now ride with us. Now that you understand, you are truly ready for lesson number 1. Are they?
They're ready.
100%. We'll see you guys there. Trap and roll escape. Let's do this.